For those of you wondering if I'm stealing this my guest format of actually interviewing streamers and stuff, the answer is no. I've interviewed people for a while, but tonight I have probably one of the best new interviewers on YouTube, and IDJester is joining me because he does it now on Tuesdays, and so hopefully at some point on Thursdays we're doing Dungeons and Dragons again. One of the best coaches, one of the most patient game teachers I've ever had is my guest tonight, and thank you for being with us. How are you?
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here, Ron. You know that. I have nothing but the utmost respect for you and your channel and everything you do.
I appreciate that. All right, so tell us a bit about yourself.
All right, well, I'm IDJester. We do lots of sports sims on my channel. Do lots of I try to get into other games as well, as Ron probably knows, as he's been checking out my channel, some of my past videos. And basically just kind of getting into sports and doing a lot of simulations. I live down here in Florida, so it's 86 degrees today, and can't wait for baseball to start tomorrow.
That's right. That's right. Now you're in the Tampa area, Clearwater, right?
No, I'm in Bradenton, which is just south of Tampa.
Pirate territory.
Yep, we are the Pirate Stadium is about 6 blocks from my office. I can see the stadium out the window, so it's very close. And I usually go over there for about 4 or 5 games a year.
Cardinals make the trek west. They don't. No,
normally they don't, but this year they're playing the Yankees, whose spring training is actually here in Tampa. So they're playing a 2-game set against the Yankees, and then the Phillies, which are also they're in Clearwater. So, but unfortunately, I'm not going to those games because my wife had already got me a Valentine's gift, and they are actually tickets to go over to Jupiter to watch a couple games. So
that's nice.
Yeah,
it's a nice facility they have there. When I covered the Nats for those 2 springs there, they in Houston, of course, share that new facility in West Palm Beach, and of course the Cardinals and Marlins share the facility in Jupiter.
Right. Yeah. So we're playing. They play the Marlins the first night, and then the next night they play down in West Palm Beach. So we're going down there for the next game. So should be pretty good.
So I'm assuming that you're originally from Ohio.
I was originally actually born and raised in outside of Buffalo, New York.
Oh, really? Whereabouts?
Grand Island, New York.
Grand what? Oh, that's just outside Niagara Falls.
Yep, right between Buffalo and Niagara Falls. Yep.
Okay, and my dad was born in Dunkirk, Grayson, Fredonia.
Okay, yep, I know right where that is. Absolutely.
Yep. So how does someone from Buffalo become a St. Louis Cardinal fan?
Well, then I moved to Ohio when I turned 21, 22, and then I lived there. And me and my wife went to St. Louis, and she wanted to see all the touristy stuff. And she's like, hey, why don't we go to a ball game? And I went to the ball game, and it was like love at first sight. You know, it's one of those things where you see something and it's like, wow, that is what I like. And so ever since then, it's been Cardinals all the way.
So were you a baseball fan growing up?
I was a sport, as any young teenager or whatever. I was kind of a sports junkie, but I was never. I loved playing the game, but I never would sit down and watch it and follow it. And so, if there was nothing else on, I would watch a game or two or something. But it's not like the playoffs are here. I gotta watch something until I went to actually watch the Cardinals play, and then ever since then, I've been following it nonstop. And that was probably about 15 years ago or so.
Oh wow, okay. So what was your main sport were main attractions as a kid growing up near Niagara Falls?
Football,
Bills,
and hockey, because we get hockey night in Canada every Saturday night on our, back in the day when we were younger, we only had 2, 4, 6, 8, and channel 28, right?
Right, yeah.
So they would broadcast the hockey night in Canada, and we get that every Saturday night. And so big hockey fan with the Sabres and everything being local. And then mostly football with the Bills.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, we got Hockey Night in Canada on cable here still.
Yeah. Now with cable, you can get it pretty much, depending on your packages and stuff. You can get it a lot easier now than you could back in, 1970s, 1980s.
Right. We wouldn't get the Maple Leafs every week, but we got the Canadiens before that package was taken over by
and the
Rogers.
Quebec Nordiques.
Yes.
Remember them? Yes.
I do remember them.
The team that was the Colorado Avalanche before they became Colorado.
Eric Lindros. Not a name that's spoken of in reverence up in Quebec for sure.
that is true. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like the other, when my dad growing up in Western New York was, baseball wasn't his thing. And when we got together as a family was right around the time the Red Sox got good in 86. And so he had some tickets to some of the Big Red Machine playoff games in Cincinnati. I'm not sure how he got that. And so, he liked the Reds, and that lasted until Dave Henderson in 86. And then, he wasn't a huge Red Sox fan, but if they were on, he wasn't going to not watch it.
Right.
And we all know how that ended.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just, Western New York wasn't a big powerhouse baseball. I mean, the closest team was really like Toronto, and they were never very good. So nobody really watched or paid any attention to baseball. So it just wasn't a thing. I mean, I guess if you kind of grow up and you're introduced to it by your parents or your friends or whatever, then you kind of get hooked. But my parents weren't into it. My friends weren't into it. So I never really got hooked into it,
No, with the Bills in town, it was easier to get hooked onto them. And knowing how old you are, obviously, they had some good teams in the 80s, even before Jim Kelly. I mean, they had some good runs. And
yeah, they had some good runs. I remember many times going to the stadiums in the snow blizzards and stuff and watching O.J. Simpson live and in person running. So, there's Joe Ferguson, the quarterback, and Ahmad Rashad was the wide receiver, and Bob Chandler was a wide receiver. And so that was kind of, that was what my friends were into. That was what my dad and my brothers were into. And so that's kind of, what I got into.
So when did you get into the realm of fantasy?
In 1982, when I was a sophomore in high school, and one of my buddies was like, "Hey, I'm going to have a Dungeons and Dragons night. You want to come over and play?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure." Had never heard about it and didn't know anything about it. And then went to my first session. I was like, "Yeah, this is pretty cool. I like this." And
Were you a comic book reader? I mean, were you more predisposed to it? Your sophomore is a little more mature, I guess, for a boy than the age they tried to get me into it, which is around the same time.
I was never much a comic book guy. I was out. I was out of the house a lot. I was running around with my friends, or we were playing football out in the street. We were playing, hockey, pickup hockey games and stuff. That's what I did. I didn't stay home. I get home from school and my parents wouldn't see me till like 9-10 o'clock at night.
I suppose if that was something that we would tell kids of today and maybe the next generation, is that's exactly what happened, is that you came home from school, you might have dropped off some stuff if you were lucky not to have any homework, but certainly in the summertime, you see the memes on Facebook of, the streetlights coming on was my curfew to come home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the way we were. There was, back, like I said, and 70s and 80s, there wasn't a lot on TV. There wasn't 85 different channels of stuff. So we were always out and about. I lived in a neighborhood that had there was about 12 boys that were between 10 to 16 years old, and we'd all just hook up and play whatever we were playing for the day.
That's awesome.
And we played baseball too, but again, I never followed it on the TV set, which kind of it's really kind of disappointing, because when I go back and and I'm looking at the 1980 card set and I'm looking at the players' names and stuff, it's like, man, I missed out on a whole bunch of stuff.
It was a good era for parody. I mean, the Yankee era was dead. In the 70s, you had the A's that won 3 in a row, and then the Reds won 2 in a row, and then the Yankees won 2 in a row, and it was the same teams over and over again. In the 80s, it just wasn't really that way. I think the Dodgers, won 2 titles in the decade, and that was, I think, the high water mark. I mean, St. Louis made some World Series, and not saying I don't want to get in the argument of which era is better than another, but it was a great era to learn and understand the game, because there were a lot of good teams, as you said.
Yeah, I think there was. I just, I didn't really start following it until 1999. So anything that really happened after that, I know about. Anything before that, I have no idea. I mean, a lot. I mean, I know about the Big Red Machine, and I've heard about Babe Ruth and all that. I mean, it's not, I don't know nothing. It's just, if you were to say who was the starting pitcher for the New York Mets in the 1978 World Series, I would be like, I have no idea, dude. Go fish.
And if you're looking in the chat, you can just see where people say, well, my grandmother got me into this, or my father got me into that. In my case, it was an uncle, who was ironically a huge St. Louis Cardinal fan. And the first game I ever went to, I liked sports. I guess the noise and the crowds and the action. Yes, there is action in baseball. Got me hooked at a really young age. We've talked a little bit about this the night that I filled in for someone else on your show. And but I went to Shea Stadium in August of '77, and it was I had no idea. I had the chicken pox. I'm 5 years old, and it's the summer of Sam, and it's about 3 weeks after the blackout, and the Mets have just traded Tom Seaver. What a wonderful time to be in.
Right, exactly.
But it was that uncle that kind of, it's a game that's passed along from generation to generation. And if you don't do it, if you're just sitting there watching, kind of a half fan of watching a baseball game, I can certainly understand why people think it's nothing there. But as you know, it goes from, your wife introduced that to you, and, from where you grew up, where there were some strong traditions, certainly with the Bills and the Sabres. Because when you were a little kid, the Sabres almost won the Cup.
Yeah, I mean, they were at some really, really good teams. I remember going and going to the playoff fever and all that stuff, so I remember those days.
Absolutely. So you moved to whereabouts in Ohio?
Moved just outside of Columbus.
So you really
Buckeye country.
You really are a legitimate Buckeye fan, and not just doing it to upset certain other fans of the Big Ten.
No, I am. My wife could care less about college football, but when the Buckeyes are on, we have to watch them. So that just tells you.
Did she go to TOSU?
She went to She went to Ohio State. She graduated from Ohio State. Yes.
That's cool. That's cool. Did you go to school?
I actually went to school. Yes. I actually went to.
Smartass about that,
No, I actually went to the college here in Florida.
Cool.
Florida Institute of Technology.
And
so I was actually studying to become a marine biologist.
Out of high school or more recently?
No, out of high school. Yeah.
That's cool. So you were already familiar with Florida then?
Yes, yes. It took me 28 years to get back, so I'm
You
very sad about that.
so you obviously love it because you're not retirement age.
No, no, I still work. I work full time. So my wife is retired, but I got a few more years to go.
That's
So,
cool. So you live on the west coast of Florida. The
yep,
weather is pretty decent most of the time. You
yep.
avoid most of the bad stuff that comes through, but yet it's 90 and humid pretty much year round. You said it's 86 today.
It was 86, yeah. But for
Oh,
me, that's perfect temperature. Now, for my wife, it's a little bit too hot. But for me, anything about 92 or less is fine.
so outside of streaming and gaming, what do you enjoy?
um, well, that's a really good question. I play some golf. Um, and streaming and gaming is pretty much my life. If I'm not streaming and gaming, I'm at work. That's pretty much it.
So what got you? There's a number of things I want to ask. Let's go back to the fantasy thing. So you're a sophomore in high school, and someone says, whatever your name is.
Let's play Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Oh, come on over. We'll teach you. We'll play. There was a group of us, like 5 or 6 of us. We got together. We played. I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. It was a good time with your buddies and stuff. And so then we started doing it about every couple months or so, and then it became like every 2 weeks, and then it became like every week, and then pretty soon, like you know, it was pretty much every weekend. I was playing it for the rest of my high school, and then when I went to college down here, I had 2 bags of luggage. One was my clothes, and my other was my D&D books that I hauled all the way down here. Little did I know I would not find anyone down here to play with, but
Really?
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
would think at a school named after technology that would be the perfect audience
I
for.
know. You would think all the nerds and geeks and stuff, but yeah, no. There was. I found out there was a group. They had enough players or whatever, but and my roommate had no desire, and so I kind of left it there. And then I took a break for through my college years. I didn't play, and then I got married, and then started playing again with a local group, and then we became friends, and we started getting back into it. So there's about a 10 or 15 year period I didn't do much with it, but
So they changed editions at that point because this is not the fifth
yeah,
edition, right?
I actually had I was one of the red box guys. I had actually um, got one of the red boxes, which was the first editions of Dungeons and Dragons back where you had Thaco, where you had to roll against Armor Class 0 and stuff. And then second edition, played a bunch of third edition, a little bit of fourth edition, and of course now fifth edition. So
Think any other of those kind of games that you did in that era too? You Star Wars or
no, we experimented a little bit with like modern like spy type stuff, like a James Bond type setting and stuff, but you know, it was harder because as I was getting into it, then computers became more popular. That was like when the started getting computers in, and then people would stop playing role playing games and stuff because they could go and play it on their computer, or play different games on their computers and stuff. So yeah, there was kind of that tradition, or switching from getting together and playing with people to just staying home and playing.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Were you into? I take it you probably weren't into sports gaming at that point. War gaming because I've seen you doing some of that. Did you try that at that point or?
Yeah, a little bit of wargaming and a little bit of, just like action games or adventure games and stuff. I was a big I spent a lot of my time as well as my youth in the old arcades, which are they're buildings where they had games where you would go and put quarters in for those people who don't know.
That's true. There's people who don't know that. Even I could play some of the arcade games. Pac-Man was I could do. Frogger I could do.
Right.
Involve more than one button push. I obviously couldn't do, but or they came at Pizza Hut. I remember when my local Pizza Hut had a Frogger machine, and so that was doubly good. You got to eat some pizza and play a game. That was awesome.
Yep. And my game of choice was pinball because I'd figured out, because I was a smart young kid, right? I figured out, I watched people play, and I said the guys that are playing pinball, they're on the machine for like anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. And the guys that are playing these other games are only on it from like 3 to 5 minutes. So the best bang for my buck is to play pinball. And so that's what I would do, because I would see people on the machines longer on playing pinball than the other machines.
Very clever. That's very clever.
Yeah. And so and I still do pinball on the computer. I love the pinball on the computer. There's a couple of really good programs and stuff, and I broadcast and I've done live streams of them occasionally here and there. But if you had that question the other day on your channel, which was a great question, by the way.
Deserted island. The desert island.
If you're on a deserted island and you can only take certain sports games, which ones would they be? If you change that question just slightly and said, if you could only take one game with you, what would it be? I would actually take pinball over anything else.
Okay, Tommy.
That's it. Absolutely.
That's cool. Yeah, I remember we had the old Apple II, and it was Night Mission, I think was the one that
Night Mission, right? Yeah.
I played a lot of that and figured out how you can mod it. So like you could get 99 balls on a quarter.
Right.
Yeah, or
exactly.
that was awesome. And again, that was just one button press at a time. You realize if you hit one paddle, anyway. But that's quite cool.
Yeah.
Talking about more of the fantasy stuff then, obviously you enjoyed playing Dungeons and Dragons in high school. When did you start to create your own worlds?
Let's see, that would have been about 26 years ago. I started, like I said, I played it, then I took a break, and when I started getting back into things, I'm like, okay, this stuff is pretty cool, but I think I could do something better. And so I started creating my own fantasy setting, my own fantasy world. Some of my old players got with me. I even created like my own rules sets, which was kind of an offshoot of the Dungeons and Dragons rule set. But then, of course, when your friends start moving away or they're getting married or whatever, then all of a sudden you try to introduce it to new people and they're like, well, we haven't played with this system. We don't know what it is, and I'm not really interested in playing. So then it was super hard to find people. But, I was always into fantasy since then because I like the kind of the stories and the development of the characters and the magic and stuff like that.
One of the things that struck me from after the end of our experience and when you set up what you wanted to do next was just how detailed you had your world, and but at the same time how concise you had that design down, which as someone who's dabbled in fiction and certainly written nonfiction, it's almost impossible for a new writer to sit there and be concise. Have you had anything published? How much do you write?
It's so interesting. Some of the questions you ask are just so good. I just tell you, it's wonderful. Well, it's funny you say that because when I would have my D&D sessions, after the session, I would actually type up what happened in like a story mode and then send it to my players and I'd post it online. And then I had my own website and everything where people could follow along with what's going on and stuff. But I was never very good at it or whatever. Well, one of the players that actually joined my D&D group, and was with us for a few years. He liked how I was doing things, so he started doing it. And after a couple years of doing this, he's like, you know what? I really, really like writing fantasy. So he went out and hang on a second. I'm going to show you something.
So hello to Dave, and thanks for Tribe for showing up. And if you're enjoying this, just go ahead and hit that like button. I'd greatly appreciate it. And thanks for all of you who've joined us so far for this chat. All right, so he's going to show us.
So he actually went out and wrote 2 fantasy novels. So Ryan T. Kalin was his name. I just know him as Ryan. But he actually published 2 really good fantasy novels, Prodigy and Prophecy, and come up with some really good, cool things.
These aren't self-published. These are actually some, the right
these
way.
Yeah, I think he self-published them.
Okay.
Yes, actually. But let's see if I can find the. He actually left me a message in the book. One of the books. Trying to remember. Sweet. Like enjoyed playing with you, and let's see if I can find it. I can't remember where he put it, but it was the other book. Let me look.
Those are hefty books.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking 652 pages. So,
that's a lot of typing.
Yeah. So this one just says, Kirk, good days ahead. And then, of course, the signature.
Oh, very cool. Very sweet.
And I know he wrote one in here too, but I can't remember where he put it, but I'll have to find it. But anyways, so it was kind of cool that, I kind of feel, because I was doing that, I was writing the stories down, and I kind of inspired him to start doing the same thing. He enjoyed writing his stories down, but he was so much better than I was as a writer. I am very creative. I have a very brilliant mind when it comes to those things. I have a problem articulating it and writing it down in a a very hard way to do that for me. My brain just doesn't work that way. Certain brains work certain ways, right?
Writing fiction, I think, is the hardest mind activity I've ever done.
Yeah.
Because you are not only chief cook and bottle washer, you are the marionette, and no one goes anywhere until you tell that thing to go anywhere. And then you got to get involved. And so if you must have heard of NaNoWriMo.
No.
This would kill our streaming schedules, but in the month of November, you can sign up for a contest where the win is just to pat yourself on the back. And the idea is to write a 50,000 word, doesn't have to be finished, but 50,000 words into a novel within 30 days.
Oh, wow.
And okay. I did that the year before I got back into the sports writing thing, and really enjoyed it. And once you get on a roll, I mean, it doesn't have to be 50,000, beautiful words. It just needs to be 50,000 words.
Right.
And I did it in 20 days. Damn, wow. I never finished a novel, but my birthday's in November and Thanksgiving's in November, and my dad was still with us at that point. So it was like days I knew I couldn't do it. So it was just good motivation, and choked out 80% of a story in 20 days.
That is awesome. I wish. See, I also have a commitment problem where I get started in a project and then I never finish it because I've moved on to something else. My ADHD, I've got so many other issues going on. It's hard for me to if I had to just sit down and write a book, I could probably do that. But if you were to start writing a book and then introduce me to a purple object, then I would be over there. I would be over there looking at the purple object. So
how do you do? You're talking about ADHD. So how do you do well building a fantasy world? Because it doesn't take much to distract people with that. But you've obviously stuck with it, learned everything. I mean, the rules for
Dungeons it's also been 26 years or whatever, however long it's been. It's been a long time. So right. I'll work on it. and then I'll break, and then a couple years later I would say, oh, I need to work on that again, and then I would break, and then I would work on it again, and then I would break, and then so I mean it's been a work in progress for many years, kind of like my hockey game that's been a work in progress again, but
I
I'm
keep
almost at the point where I'm about ready to start that project again
I
if
keep
I can
getting
find.
asked about that. When is he bringing that out? I don't know when he's bringing that out.
I would like to I would like to stay with it enough where I have at least a prototype to send a few people and have them try it out and
Mm-hmm.
see what they think. I've got everything in my brain. It's just a matter of sitting down and putting that information down.
What drove you to want to create a hockey game?
Because I feel like every hockey game that's out there doesn't really play the way I would want to play it. So
Such as
either they're too simplistic on the rules, or they're too complicated, and it would take you 4 or 5 hours to complete a game, which is not, nobody wants to do that.
no.
And the more detailed you make the game, obviously the slower it's going to be down. The more people got to look up, if I got to look up his stats every time on his player card, it's going to slow the game down. So hockey, I think, if you were to ask me which would be the hardest sport to replicate or create a game for, I think hockey would be, because you have this constant flow of players coming in and out of the ice all the time. And then you also have to worry about, in like baseball, you're going to get a result. But in hockey, it's not that way. You don't have it's not like he's going to be a base hit or a strikeout or a swing. In hockey, I could, there's lots of different things that could possibly happen. And then so to have all those different options happen and keep a flow of the game and make it quick enough and easy enough to play, plus being able to change lines in and out all the time and change players at a constant pace, which, you got to do all this within an hour and an hour and a half to get the game done. So,
Right, and you're right. I mean, they vary from the very simplistic shootout to I don't think strat I would consider to be very difficult, and the inside the crease I don't think is all that difficult. You were doing status pro the other day, and I was interested to see how you did that. But again, it's a combination of fast action cards and dice and that, and it's just that's not how And if you're doing solo, which I think a lot of us do these games solo, that's just not oh good, I can spend 2.5 hours doing this on a Sunday afternoon. Maybe I should go mow the lawn.
right,
Type
right.
deal.
I don't think people are going to, you have that balance where it's between statistical reality versus playability. Some people want things that are statistically accurate, but then of course to do all that you got to add more rules and more complexity and everything in the game, which again slows the game down. Now, because of computers, you can take all the math of the games and all the charts and everything and make it a little bit easier and faster. But for me, I'm not a programmer, so I don't have that option to be able to say, okay, well, I've got this great idea, and if I could program it in, you could play a game really fast and easy because of all.
Right.
But like Dave Coach Sports or whatever, where they have that capability to do that.
But that's about 35, 40 minutes to play solo. Glenn Bonesteel asks, how long would an ideal game for you to be to play?
I would say 45 minutes to an hour. I would try to get it to less than 45 minutes is what I would look at. You know, um, and again, you're taking into consideration, if this card represents a play and it's 20 seconds, then I've got to go through the deck, really, really fast, right? But if this card only represents 2 minutes of time, I don't have to go through the deck as fast. But then I'm not going to get as detailed or statistical reality as as hockey should be.
Yeah, let's strats about what, 40 seconds a card, 50 seconds, 40 seconds a card. Inside the crease is 20 seconds a card.
Well, I think there's 30. You go through a fast action deck for a period, and I think there's 30
and strat there's
cards,
30.
32 cards in a deck. So 20 minutes is basically 32 cards. So that's about 35, 25 to 35 seconds, somewhere around there.
That.
Yeah.
And that's, as you said, that's just not the pure essence of hockey. It's not even really I know that basketball, usually the fast action cards are 6 or 12 seconds, but you're not into basketball. And that's also a hard one to game.
Well, that would be just as challenging as hockey. The only difference with basketball and hockey is the basketball players, you change out rarely in a period. Hockey, you're changing them out all the time. I mean, the speed and the fastness of the game are very equal. It's just the basketball players get longer to rest in between each period or in between each play.
Exactly. So I guess that comes to the next logical question is, what was your gateway into sports gaming?
My gateway into sports gaming was I belonged to when I lived in Ohio. I belonged to CABS, which stands for Columbus Area Board Gaming Society, and we would get together and board game all the time.
Oh, that's awesome!
We would have. You can go check it out. We have one of the best board gaming communities in the country. You can check it out. We would have on average between 120 to 130 people show up for a meeting.
Wow. And what were is your wife a gamer?
No.
Okay.
I mean, when the kids would come over or stuff, neighbors and stuff, we would game with them.
Monopoly and
she would not go with
sort of
me.
thing,
No,
right?
no, she would not do that. No.
So what was the game of choice in those days for you?
Oh, I mean, it was everything. I mean, just Dominion. I don't know if you're familiar with board gaming or not. Dominion, before Dominion became anything, the guy that made Dominion brought it to CABS, and my wife and my best friend at CABS and his wife were the beta testers for Dominion at CABS.
That's cool.
They get royalty checks every month from Dominion because they were part of the beta testers for Dominion before it even became anything.
We've had friends over the game. It's been a long time because, as you said, life happens and people move away and all that. But my wife has some learning disabilities, and so obviously we're not teaching her complex games. But we'd get 6 or 7 around for dinner and an evening of Risk, and had a hell of a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. I remember going to summer camp every year. Our family would go to summer camp for 3 weeks in the summer, and they'd have several board games there. And I remember so much just sitting there playing the board games. At summer camp every year when I was probably 6 to 18. So, but anyways, my gateway to sports gaming was Stratomatic, because they had some of the cards and dice there, and some of the people knew how to play it, and so that's kind of that was my first introduction to it.
Baseball or
no? It was actually the hockey game.
Okay.
One of the cabbies, which is the members there at CABS, he was actually one of the original beta testers for the hockey version as well. So we had. He taught me how to play that, and then I kind of grew from there. And again, this is kind of pre my introduction to baseball, which was 1999. So it was kind of a few years before all that happened. And then once the baseball thing came, then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I've got to get some of this baseball stuff so I can play baseball.
Because in your case with that, it is kind of, as we alluded to earlier, it usually is passed down from generation to generation. You're one of the rare cases where you've discovered this great game as a full-fledged adult and liked it.
Yep. That's
And
true.
so
Absolutely true. I had, it was just a kind of on a whim too. I mean, if my wife wouldn't have said, "Hey, we're in St. Louis. Do you want to go to a baseball game?" and I would have said, "Nah, I'm not really interested," when we never would have went, then maybe my life would have been totally, totally different.
did McGuire homer?
I'm sorry.
Did McGuire homer?
No, McGuire wasn't on the team. It was,
99?
uh,
Yeah, he
it
was.
was,
That was the year after he had
well, it might
70.
not have been 99 exactly. It might have
Okay.
been, I'm rough guessing when we went. Maybe it
Late
was
90s, yeah.
2001, or maybe it was 88 or 98, or I forget. But I remember Pujols hit a home run. I
Oh,
remember
okay.
that.
Well, that's
Yeah,
pretty good.
so Pujols was there. I don't remember much else.
Mark McGuire I got married in the summer of 98, and Mark McGuire hit a home run on my wedding day.
Oh, there you go.
Man, I was so disappointed when all that came out because that was so much fun. It really, and McGuire is a good guy.
Oh yeah.
He just did what a lot of other people were doing. There's nothing sinister about that. But yeah, he hit one. He hit one on my wedding day, which was awesome. I forget which one it was. It was, I think, 50 or 51. I'll have to look. All right, so that got you in the sports gaming, and obviously you're now deep into sports gaming, and along with the fantasy realm. So I mean, I looked at your channel, and of all of our friends of the community channels, your subscriber base is huge. You're the largest one I've ever talked to. How did you start? What possessed you to want to go onto YouTube and do uh, whatever it is that you start? What possessed you to do it? What did you start doing it with?
Originally, my idea was to do wargaming because I was focusing in on wargaming, and there wasn't a lot of really good wargaming channels out there. And so that's a lot of my subscribers came really early when I started doing my wargaming stuff, and they kind of just stuck with me since then as I've
So
transitioned from that, from more gaming to something else, and then adventure games, and then sports games, and then card games, and then all kinds of different
do
things.
you still war game?
I do. I still war game.
Still war
Yes,
game.
not as much as I would like to, because the enjoyment in a war game, kind of like a sports game, are very similar. The enjoyment of it is what you get out of it. And
Yes,
I get a lot more enjoyment of the sports game enjoyment than I do the war game.
I've tried to war game. I've got a lot of money invested into games that I just cannot understand. Our mutual friend Devin, the original Grognard. I just would love to have him sit and teach me how to play a game, because my fear is, and you're probably a lot more advanced than I am, is that I'm going to make a total fool of myself doing it, and second of all, not make easy mistakes, as opposed to a sports game where you know the rules, and if you know the players, and now and today with all the reference pages for this and that, I mean, you should know who people are. That it's you can put two and two together, and for a war game, I mean, operation order of operation battle. Please read the 7,000-page book written in 1947, and you'll get a sense of how this battle was fought.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of wargaming in a nutshell, and that's kind of not. Speaking of the OG, I'm not sure if he's here,
He
but
was the first person to comment.
I think he was here originally. I'm not sure if he's still here or not, but I think the OG would have a heart attack if he would have saw my room before, when I moved down to Ohio, or from Ohio to Florida. I sold all my collection
Oh,
of war games, and it was over $2,000 is what I got for my collection.
oh. So all those Avalon Hill shelf games and
I
all that.
had I had some really rare games. I had signed collector's editions. I have had at one point some games that were ultra rare, and yeah, and I was like, the problem was I didn't play them, right? So it's like I couldn't justify the cost to bring them all the way down here to Florida, have them sitting on a shelf and just collect dust because, that's, it's not going to get anywhere. So I decided a guy offered me over $2,000 and I'm like, yeah, that would pay for my moving costs to move to Florida. So I agreed and gave it to him, but he had a Tahoe car, and it was 3.5 loads full of a Tahoe.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no. You had young kids. You'd never be able to get to play that. I see what he does to get those things on the tabletop, and I'm going, I would, my cat would knock it down. we get it all set up, and the cat would knock it down. Same thing with like a model train set or anything like that.
Right, yeah. I mean, with cabs, there was always an opportunity to find players to play, so there was that opportunity. But of the 110 people that would show up, there'd only be maybe 20 people that would play a war game. And of the 20 people that would play a war game, then you have to find the game that both of you enjoy playing, and then how long is it going to take to play it? How long are they going to be there? How long you're going to be there? And some of these war games can take weeks upon months and stuff. So it's like, I'd buy them. I'd cut all the counters out. I'd make all these special charts. I'd go out. I'd take all the charts and stuff, and I'd take them to Kinko's. I'd have them all laminated. I would have, download files and print out all the extra files, and I'd have everything ready to go, and it would just sit in a box. So it finally got to the point where I had to make a choice.
Yeah. No, I at one point looked into trying to see if Advanced Squad Leader would be something that I could A, do solitaire, and B, would enjoy. And the $100 for the rule books alone, like, does this cover
Advanced Squad Leader was kind of my big first project that I did on my channel, because I was getting into Advanced Squad Leader. There wasn't many videos on it, and I couldn't understand how to play it. So I sat down and learned it, taught myself, read every rule, and then learned how to play. And then people were like, hey, show me how to play. Show me how to play. So I started doing videos on that. And that's how I kind of got into the YouTubing. But, it was basically like just tutorials, and I'd play a mission and stuff like that, because there was a need for it. There was a need to give back to the community. If you know something, you might as well, share it with other people. And that,
exactly.
The only way to really share with anyone was to do a video. So
exactly, you hit the nail on the head. I see Beatles Eternally is there, and it's IDJester live@gmail.com when Beatles is ready to go on camera with him.
When he feels like stepping up to the plate and not being chicken, he knows how to get in touch with me.
So in looking through and I want to touch more on the Dungeons and Dragons thing in a little bit, but I was looking through your playlist, and like I said, your game selections are as eclectic as mine. I thought I was the only one that would just kind of swing back and forth. City Skylines, you have several things about that. Biggest resource hog, I think, in the history of computers.
Yeah. I am, I get these creative things in my brain, and it helps you create things, so I like games that do that. Railroad Tycoon, there's a bunch of videos on my channel with Railroad Tycoon where
love the second version.
You're building the railroad trains into the different stations, and doing all, just games where you get to build something from nothing. I guess it's kind of, that kind of goes back to building a Dungeons and Dragons world, because you're building something from nothing, right? So,
without question. Beetle says you haven't responded to his gauntlet yet. Let's keep it polite here. There might be children watching. So how did you?
I take his gauntlet and I use my lightsaber to chop it in half. So. But he doesn't know what a lightsaber is, because he's way back in the old days.
All right. So shots fired. What got you back into D&D? You talked a little bit about getting back into D&D. What really set you back in there, and when did you start wanting to be
I
a
think it
dungeon
was,
master?
getting back into it was when the third edition came out. It was just when third edition started coming out. It got really Dungeons and Dragons. When third edition came out, it exploded. For you guys that are not familiar with the Dungeons and Dragons community, I mean, second edition was okay. It was nice, but here they were. They were going to introduce some new things to the system, and they're going to streamline it, and they're going to make it of a more of a party game, more of an acceptable type game. And that's kind of got me back into it, because I'm like, oh, I got to try out this new edition. Everybody else was doing it, and so I mean, people at work were talking about it. Up until that point, you never heard anybody talking about Dungeons and Dragons. It was kind
No,
of it was kind of like a
died out,
taboo.
yeah.
It
Todd
was
Risk
like,
is an acceptable war game. And my dad was such a bad cheater at Stratego, my mother refused to even have it in the house.
yeah, absolutely.
We almost got him one year and was told in no uncertain terms with a very serious look on her face, no. So we didn't.
But I like fantasy. I like the fantasy movies. The Lord of the Rings. Great series. I think that introduced people. Conan the Barbarian movies back in the days. Anything like that was really kind of my up my alley, and ever since then, I have a whole collection of fantasy books on my shelf that I read now, and I find that almost as fun as playing a sports game now. I mean, it's strange how life, changes you with just how you think about things. If you'd asked me, and 16 or 18-year-old me, when you're 52, you're going to be playing baseball every night on your computer, I'd be like laughing you out of the neighborhood.
Oh my God. There was in college, and Tony Whitehill, who's probably not here tonight, is someone I went to college with. So if you see him pop up, it's someone I actually know and knows other people in the community. We'd get these strat. I mean, you've heard me joke, reason 37,000 why I flunked out of college was strat-o-matic. And the idea of playing those games solitaire was such, even for us, was kind of taboo. Like, who the hell would want to do that? Until I bought the 1990 version of it on the computer and the key discs, and that's, a whole other kettle of fish. But absolutely. And you're right. I mean, there's when you do creative stuff. Now, what you very specifically haven't mentioned what you do now, and you don't need to go into specifics. So you don't want to, but what do you do for your day job? Does it anything to do with creativity or what?
Yes, it does. I work for the state attorney's office, and I edit videos and audios that like if you see a store camera, someone
Right.
stealing something or whatever, I get those ready for our attorneys to take to
So by
court.
the time, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So by the time that you get home from work, you're ready to unwind and get out of the theater of the absurd.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, sure. I mean, when I left Fanside, which probably was one of the smartest things I ever did because of the lack of money and all the work that you put into it. I mean, I did something that I loved, but it didn't pay well, and the hours were just god awful. But you got to be creative. And so I think for you, it's a case of, look, I can bring you into this world. Living My Rhapsody, who probably won't be here tonight, does that with her readings of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And Dog Sidious, who we wish we would see a little more of in there, with especially when he was playing Red Dead Redemption 2. I can't stand westerns. I would sit there glued to that,
Right.
just
Absolutely.
because of the way that he presented it and the way that the game itself was done. So absolutely, I can understand. You want to create after dealing with the real world, and it sounds like you really deal with the real world. you want to get out of that. And if it's going back and playing a season or transporting yourself to whatever it is that I understand that completely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. I mean, it's like days when my day's over, I come home, I would just want to unwind and relax and do what I like to do. And right now, that's playing sports sims on the computer, finding new games, and cutting out cards and doing all that stuff.
I sent you the link to Valhalla.
To what?
To Valhalla.
Valhalla?
Yeah, if you're familiar with yeah, that's a completely free game. 2 dice, 3 dice, and 4 dice version.
Okay, I'll have to look for that.
Very chart heavy.
Oh, is it?
But it, when I played it, it was kind of like if Appa and Strat got together and had a kid.
Oh, okay.
Okay, just put it, and he's created other games since then. He's the guy that does Fall Classic Baseball. If you've ever played that.
Nope, never played that.
All right, I'll send you the link for that too. That's
make sure you do. I'm really, we talked a few minutes before I came on, but actually I got just for you guys information, I got like 5 email messages after my live stream last night.
This is for National Pastime Next Generation Plus.
Right, people that had come across different files or different gaming systems. Hey, you might be interested in trying this system as well, or this. I know you were playing your Status Pro hockey game. I don't know, but if you know, there's new edition, there's a new rule set, there's new charts and all this stuff, and I'm getting all this great, wonderful feedback from our community, and I just, it's been awesome just to be able to just get in touch with people, have them get in touch with me and let me know about this stuff, because one of the reasons I wanted to bring on National Pastime Next Generation Plus was because I don't remember ever seeing it on anybody's channel. I don't ever remember anybody talking about it.
I streamed it once.
I think you said that, but I don't remember that. And that's probably at the time I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know anything about it. So, but it's a really, really good system. And I think it's definitely something that our community at least should be aware of to give them an option.
The board reader was, I believe, programmed by Ron Bernier, who does a lot of the replay guides that you used to be able to buy. He's now made them for free, and they were 900-page books that listed every lineup in a given year, listed, for Clinton Park. So I haven't seen in the chat tonight, relievers used in the game and when. So if you really wanted to do the, true as played, this is what you got. And now they're all free. And so he's the one that programmed that board reader. And so he's the one that put all that retro sheet data and all those lineups. It really is just find the game you want to play and play it.
Absolutely.
And so I'm absolutely over the moon that you got recognition, especially for the people who worked on that. Because there are a lot of great games out there that kind of fall under the radar. And
I think, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's all right. That deserve attention.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of brought this up when I was interviewing Stratomatic Delaware the other night. The fact that I can't really justify spending $60 for a new edition or a new season file when there's all these other new games, different systems, and I can get them for either free or a lot cheaper, or reasonably priced. Just in the last 2 months, we were payoff pitch. We've gotten into dice baseball. We got into National Pastime Next Generation Plus, and I feel like your money can be spent really well. If you just look around for things that are available.
Well, I'm with you. Strat would be the Desert Island thing would be Strat for me, because that's what I played first. I like the engine. It doesn't take a lot of lookups on the chart. It flows relatively quickly. The results are weighted. So something that happens on a 7 roll is much more likely to happen than on a 2. And there's, I don't mind the half the results come off of one card and half the results come off another. That's never bothered me. I almost had the version in the cart. I was going to bite the bullet and pay the $60 for the card images, the season, and hope I could recover the other seasons that I had. And then I went over to, no, let's see if Pete Ventura's got it out for replay yet. He doesn't. He's not been feeling well. And, but he had all of his other modern seasons for $20 a pop. So I bought 2 modern seasons for the $40 and doubled my money. And I will tell you that the 2017 Washington Nationals are as frustrating on the tabletop as they were to cover. Which is a sign of a great game. And there's a lot of great games. I never understood why, rah-rah one or the other. I mean, we all have our own personal preferences. I'm not a huge OOTP fan, but I'm not going to poo-poo anybody who sits there and plays OOTP, because for what it offers, it's fantastic. Doesn't tickle my fancy.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, because
but it's a great gateway into, look, if you want to run a Lord of the Rings league, you can.
Absolutely.
And, And so there's nothing wrong with that. Let me see. In the chat, all coconut flavored. Yes, of course, Dave, there'll be snacks. I'll answer Todd's question. I don't think you can use Open Office for that. It's all Excel, right?
That is correct. I actually heard from the developer today, because he watched my live stream after I kind of introduced myself to him, and he emailed me back. He saw the live stream, and the question was there whether or not you could use anything except for Excel. Excel has virtual basic macros, which the other offshoots can't use, so you have to use it with Microsoft Excel. So
and yes, if you had sat there and told me at 19 years old that not only I'd be playing games on the spreadsheet, and of course this is when Lotus 1-2-3 ruled the roost. There's a retro name for you.
Absolutely.
Do one of these on a spreadsheet, but having the time of your life. I did some bowling today, and it is interesting to call. Not sure what I'll do with it, if it's something that I'll actually bring to the channel or not. But it is, it's like, yeah, wow. It's great. It just takes so much of the stress away from things. All right, so let me go back to the D&D thing. When did you first become a dungeon master? What made you want to do it? And I'll start with that.
Okay. Well, after my group in high school, I took a break when I went to college, got married, and when I started getting back into it. When 3rd edition came out, it was a matter of, getting together with my buddies. They had played Dungeons and Dragons in the past, like me. And we're like, hey, maybe we should try this out. And they're like, well, who's going to be Dungeon Master? So they all voted me to be Dungeon Master. So I kind of been Dungeon Master ever since then. I think I played maybe 10 times in the last 25 years. I played as an actual player. I'm mostly Dungeon Master.
Do you miss playing as an actual player?
Probably no. I would say no. To just give you a quick answer, it would be no. I don't miss playing as a player. I enjoy the Dungeon Master part of it, because, again, for me, that's like the creative part, where I get to let my creative juices flow out and designing different adventures, and then watching to see what happens to my creation. Kind of sit back and let the players do what they would do to find out what happens.
And so whatever possessed you to want to do that with not only strangers on YouTube, but people who would never even, I've played a few times, but certainly not D&D, and it was much more having, doing something with the wife and her friends, as opposed to, here, watch these 17 videos and read this and have fun. Whatever possessed you to want to do that? I mean, there's a level of masochism seen here in New England pre-2004.
Yeah, the heart wants what the heart wants.
Apparently so.
You know, so sometimes the heart rules over your brain. So whatever the heart wants, the heart gets. So it's
Have
kind
you
of
had you
my
coached
philosophy.
before any sport?
Have I what?
Had you coached before or taught before?
I coached my two young daughters in soccer, and that was my whole coaching career right there.
So yeah, but experience wise, for all but one of us, that was about where you were at with your daughters and kiddie soccer is where you were with us when that started. We're talking about ID was the dungeon master for my first foray into Dungeons and Dragons, which went from a Chinese fire drill to Chinese water torture to I'd forgotten until Chris had said that I was the only survivor of that because I was told to run.
Yes, that was a great time, and
I loved it.
and I think, you know, as I talked about it the live stream the other night, I think when you have people that are giving you a story like you guys do during your live streams and during your sports games that you're playing, and you convert that over to playing Dungeons and Dragons, is basically the same thing. Instead of playing with a bat and a ball, you're playing with a sword and a shield, right?
Exactly. And you know, and it's one of those things that you because I have done some wargaming and a lot of sports gaming, and especially when you're, you know, stratomatic, you know, you're looking at a cards and dice and you're referring to a chart, you know, very much is a top-down model of gaming, and you know, you can't look at it that way. But when I play a sports game, I don't look at it as the I'm on the mound or at the plate because those are experiences that I've never truly had. You know, I've watched it on television. And apparently, a lot of it rubbed off because I'm a poor imitation of a lot of people. but but I always do those, you know, from that aspect of, you know, sitting down on a Saturday afternoon, or probably in your case, you know, 6 hours on a Sunday afternoon, going, okay, well, you know, this is the way that I'd want to see it done.
Right.
And you know, when you brought up that point early on, it's the same thing. You're just doing it like as you said, with rocks, swords, and lightsabers, depending on what you want. You know, certainly more creativity, and it's exactly the same thing.
Absolutely. I continue to this day. I know there are many YouTube channels that I subscribe to, possibly even people in our chat right now that I've gone and watched them and said, damn, they would be a good Dungeons and Dragons player.
Would you like to call anybody out?
I don't know. I'm not calling anybody out because I'm letting everyone decide for themselves. I've tried that where you kind of, I was actually running 5 Dungeons and Dragons game sessions a week on my YouTube channel at one point.
I saw the playlists.
Yes. And uh, you can't convince someone to do it. They have to commit for themselves. If I convince you to come in and do it, or you volunteer to come in, there's two different ways of how you're acting going into the game. You're either going to
Right.
go in with an open mind and you're thinking about the possibilities and the fun and everything you can have, or if I drag you in, you're like, oh God, I got to do this. I
It's a
don't know if I
chore.
want to do this. Yeah, it's a chore. So I've tried throughout my D&D career, throughout everything, and it's just not worth it. You got to let maybe people make up their minds for themselves. I did a whole 8 episodes on role playing, saying to people, you can do this if you want to, but it's up to you to do it. I can give you the tools that you will need to do it, but it's up to you if you want to do it or not.
But even if you had 5, 6, 7 truly experienced players who know that rule book inside and out, doing it over a camera, a microphone, with virtual dice, and not being in the same room together, that has got to be hard to pull together.
Very hard, Very hard. Most online games that I've ever been associated with, and I've had many, the longest one I think we ever lasted was 6.5 months.
That's a long time.
Well, yeah, 6.5 months, but most of them last about 2 months before people go, oh yeah, I can't, they email you or they email the group and say, I can't make it Tuesday because my dog's taken to the hospital. Or, life starts coming up. My wife, is switching jobs. I won't be able to do it anymore. The commitment, it's hard to get 6 people that say, I don't care about everything else, but Tuesday night from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock is my time. Don't bother me. Don't call me. Don't ask for a ride. Don't ask me to help move you. 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock on Tuesday nights are my time. And to find some people that are willing to do that month after month after month after month, they're very hard to find.
What would be your ideal length for, not in a session, but I kind of like the idea of taking a character and going through several different adventures and then watching that character grow.
Well, I mean, the ultimate is to take a character from level 1 to level 20. I mean, that is the ultimate, right? I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah.
But that's going to take you, depending on how often you play, it's going to take you between 1.5 to 2 years.
And that's to try to find other people to commit to that is.
And you have to, I mean, people always, and I've learned this, and I'll tell you the same thing. They always say, oh yeah, I'm dedicated. I will be there every week. I swear, I promise. Nothing will come between it. And then
until the weather gets warm.
Right? Then the weather gets warm. Or they have a vacation and then they go on vacation for a week and then they come back and they can't play because now they missed work because they were on vacation, so they got to work extra, and then all of a sudden they missed 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, I mean, and I understand all this because life comes up. I have to miss occasionally here or there or whatever, but yeah, just finding people to commit to it, especially when you're not doing it face to face. If I lived 3 blocks from your house and you call me up and say, I'm not feeling good, I can't come here, I can drive over to your house and find out if you're lying to me or not.
That's right.
When you live in, 6 states away from me.
I'm in Vermont, you're in Florida.
Yeah. You say I'm sick, I'm at your mercy, basically.
You don't know if I'm over at Dunkin' or out to dinner with my wife or whatever.
Exactly. And if you have 5 people and you have one that starts doing it, then you put the pressure on the other guys to perform, to run that character, to do everything, and then they start going, well, I don't want to run 2 characters tonight, so I'm not coming. And then all of a sudden you have 2 guys missing, and then the other 2 guys are like, well, if 2 guys aren't coming, let's postpone it for a week. And then all of a sudden it just snowballs out.
Never felt like a fish out of water in public like I did that first time that I played.
But you did a great job. You did a really, really good job.
Enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. But a lot of it goes back to what you said. You're doing this. It's the same thing. You're just doing that. You're not doing it with touchdown passes and strikeouts. You're doing it with goblins and other thing. And I'm not a huge fantasy fan. I like Star Trek. That I get, but that's more of a military thing than anything else. And philosophy.
Well, I am hoping to bring it back. I know we've talked offline. We talked during your live stream about bringing it back as well.
Yes.
And I would be more than happy to do that if I think we could get together with a full dedicated party group. I know you're dedicated. I know Stratomatic Delware's dedicated. I know even our good friend Herb Pilgrim is a pretty dedicated and will want to get back into it. We just need to find 1 or 2 more that are dedicated and willing to try it out and give it a whirl.
Before I throw it open to questions, stealing something from ID's thing, how did you get involved in this particular community?
It was It was Al, Red Sox fan,
Of course,
came
it was
to.
Al.
Of course, it was Al. He came to a couple of my live streams that I was having, and kind of introduced himself. And then, of course, you heard the expression when, or the conflict when Clinton Parks came. It's the first time we met Clinton Parks. He started. Al thought he was a troll, and he was acting like a troll, but he wasn't really being a troll. He was being really, really smart. I forget what we were talking about or whatever. And, I think he was telling me how to pronounce names properly. And so Al thought he was trolling me and just trying to be a jerk. But then Clinton Parks came back a few times. And I remember sitting there with him one night, and we were trying to figure out a couple rules that, for Internet Baseball League, that the way the rule was written and the charts didn't make sense. And Clinton Park sat there and for like 20 minutes with me trying to help me figure it out, and we finally did. So that was
He,
kind of the intro. And so I would go to Al, watch his channel, and also Higher Ground Gaming. He was very tight with Higher Ground Gaming, and so I'd watch those two channels, and
yeah,
then
I miss Eric. I miss
yeah,
Eric.
I do too. I wish he would be more around. I've seen him. He's come to a couple of my live streams recently and
Yep.
stuff. Um, he has a great, wonderful channel as well, and
There is
I I wish he would stick around and play some more with us. So
there is plenty of room. There is not, there might seem like there's a lot of streaming, but no one is doing the exact same thing. Even if you were doing the same season with the same engine, no one is ever going to do the exact same replay. And so there's plenty of room.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right, before I open it up, what would be now, so you're kind of newish to sports, which, like I said, has caught me a little bit by surprise by that. What are
New
you
to
most
sports simming, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
sports simming and baseball in particular, because
yes.
it wasn't something that was browbeaten, or not browbeaten, something ingrained to you at 7, 8 years old.
Right.
What are you most? I know you go back and forth with Beatles over the dead ball era, and I kind of side with you on that. What are you most curious to learn about, history wise or sport wise? Something that that you might have missed growing up, that you was you talked a little bit about
Well,
80s baseball.
it's another great question, Ron. You do a wonderful job on your channel. I have nothing but the most respect for
Thank
you,
you.
what you've done in your channel. And anybody I know, I would highly recommend them to come over and watch you, because you're brilliant, you're articulate, you're fun, you're witty, and everything. So kudos to you for that. This is another really, really good question. Um, I kind of, it's because I don't have that history. I don't have growing up knowing about the 78 Sox or the 84 Royals or the 1964 New York Jets or whoever. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I don't know this. And when I hear you guys talking about it, I'm kind of jealous, because I'm like, you guys know this. You've experienced it. You guys have a past with this stuff. I don't have a past with this stuff. So everything for me at this point is new and interesting. If it didn't happen from 2000 to today, I have no idea about it. And so, like, I've got the 1990 cards in my hand, and when I'm cutting them out, I'm looking at the players' names, and I couldn't tell you who half these players are. But you guys talk about them like they're your brothers. Like you've seen them, you've experienced what they can do. I have no idea if this guy. Let's see, who is this guy? This is Tom O'Malley, 1990 New York.
Never
I have
heard
no
of him.
idea. Never heard of him either. But I mean, it's just an example. There's just uh, eh, Sid Fernando. Sid,
Oh, El Cid. Oh, sure. Fat pitcher. Oh my God, he was a strikeout king for the Mets, but he was always pitched 30, 40 pounds overweight. I don't know if he's with the Phillies, but yes, okay, you've just made your point. You
yeah,
mentioned the second name, and I've got blah, 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 blah.
yeah. So you have this already ingrained in your brain, but I don't have that because I don't have the history. I don't have the connections. I don't have the memories because I don't remember watching games like this. I don't remember going to the 1990 World Series and stuff. So when you guys talk about it, I'm kind of jealous because you guys have all this stuff. So for me right now, the the more I experience and the more I see, the more I come across. It's like a new like a baby open her eyes and
Exactly.
learning about the world now.
Well, you're familiar with hockey, and you grew up in an area that is still pretty hockey mad
Yes.
in Buffalo. Now, I assume since they can't play in the Stanley Cup final, let's just say in the Eastern Conference Finals, if it was the Sabres and the Lightning, that you'd be torn. Not this year, obviously, because Tampa's
I
on
would
fire.
be torn. Yes. I could care less about Tampa until I moved down here, but since I've been down here, the year we moved down here
Mm-hmm.
was the year they went to the Stanley Cup and lost. So it was like the big buzz thing. So then I kind of got hooked on them, and I really liked them.
Yeah,
That
they're a good. Marty St. Louis played his college hockey right up the hill from behind me. If you looked out, if I didn't have a blackout curtain out here and there wasn't a post office on the way, you could see where he played. Not the arena, but the college where he played, the
yeah,
University of
awesome
Vermont.
player, awesome player.
Um. Okay, so you're familiar with the Sabres and you're familiar with that, so you know who Kenny Dryden is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so
I've
Kenny.
experienced all the hockey stuff,
Well,
but if
the point, the quote I'm going to give you here is attributed to Dryden, who's also a brilliant man, and Mr. Gardner there for his comment to me in the chat. Um, Sports means the most to you at 14 years old. Whatever year you turn 14 is what you're going to associate everything else with because it meant the most in your life. Because by the time you turn 15 or 16, you're worrying about driving a car. You might have had a girlfriend. You talked about this unintentionally in the first half hour of the show. I got married and life changed and I have kids. And so at 25, it's not going to mean as much to you. And at 35, it really doesn't mean as much to you. And, I think you and I are lucky that we're around 50 years old that we've run into these people in this community. And so it means a lot again, but for all different reasons. It's not necessarily the modern players that mean as much, but the brotherhood of being with people with like yeah. So yeah, whenever you turn 14, it's never going to be mean as much to you as it does then.
yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. It's
And it just made so much sense to me. I don't know if Dryden actually said it or not. That's kind of like the old Vin Scully thing with baseball. Playoff baseball is a Shakespearean tragedy in 7 acts. I don't know who came up with it, but it just rings so
right.
true. Same thing with Stanley Cup playoff hockey. It's a Shakespearean tragedy in 7 acts. And I certainly have been on the wrong side. Anyway, but yeah, and so for you to want to discover that in your 50s is pretty good. I'm most curious about the period right around the war because there was some good ball players, careers interrupted. Imagine the numbers that Bob Feller and Ted Williams would have put up if they didn't miss 3.5 years.
Right. Right.
And all that. And because, as I said, I don't know if it was to you or for someone else, anything from 74, 75 on, I have memories attached to. I go back and play these seasons, and I'm having a hell of a lot of fun with 82. But I wouldn't want to go back and relive that because I've already done it once. And I don't want to be trapped at 10 years old or trapped at 12 years old or trapped at 18 years old or whatever. But no, but I completely understand where you're coming from. And 90 is a good season. Any of those 80 seasons there's lots of stories. There's lots of good subplots. Even if we can get Bryce Harper signed.
I'm sure you could find something interesting about every single season. Pennant races or events that happened or whatever. But like I said, I don't know that stuff, and I tease Beatles eternally about it because like I don't know about the 1990s stuff and the 1980s and the 1970s, let alone what happened back at the turn of the century. I'm like, that's why I'm not a big fan of dead ball, is because I'm still trying to learn about this stuff when I was alive and born, let alone worry about things that happened 100 years ago. I can care less.
Well, you watched enough football growing up that when they would show a clip, watching a game in 84, 85 from the 60s, it was either on grainy black and white film or a grainy NFL color, color. There was
Yep.
no videotape of an event from 1964 in the National Football League, or certainly the American Football League, which is where the Bills come from.
Yep.
And so it was all seemed so old. And today you're watching a clip from whatever, thanks to YouTube, and going, oh, yeah, I watched this. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. It may not be in full widescreen, but it's in videotape and it's in color.
Yeah.
And it's also, you knew where you were when you watched it.
Right.
You're watching it the same way. With dead ball, for me, it's just too far removed. I have an appreciation of all of baseball history, but it's not. I didn't live through it. The people who got me into baseball didn't live through it.
Right.
My uncle, the one I told you about, the Cardinal fan, he admitted, that he skipped school 42 and 43, took a train down from Pontley, Vermont to New York City to watch the Yankees and the Cardinals in a World Series game. That's the sort of stuff that, kind of fascinates me, because there's a connection to it. You say that, they're kind of like the players of the 80s are like brothers. Well, the connection is much more on who we're chatting with, not necessarily the Juan Marichals or Vince Coleman getting run over by the tarp machine, but because we shared that memory, it builds an instant bond between people.
Absolutely.
Is I guess how I go with that. And I guess for me, there's some wonderful stuff written, and thanks to newspaper archives, you can go through and read about Merkel's boner and all that. But for me, there's just no emotional attachment to it.
Yeah, I what you say again is right on, because when I look at it, I can kind of remember again a little bit of the 1990s, not a lot, but a little bit. But for me, my connection is the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2011 season. So, that for me is my connection. That is my time. That's when, like, that was when I was 14 years old, really, because, that was, you said the 14th year is the most important. If I started following it in 2000, about 2011 would have been, my 11, I would have been 11 or 12 or 13 years old.
Well, I thought the Cardinals were good. One thing, if your wife took you down to Miami and go sit up in the third deck at Old Sun Life and watch the Marlins play.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a whole generation in this country that are Braves fans because of cable, and then they got good.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I just don't have that connection to the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1940s.
And I never had that. And obviously, my grandmother saved a paper from her mother had given her, and there was some pictures of Babe Ruth's first year at Yankee Stadium. Okay, but again, the connection isn't Babe Ruth at Yankee Stadium. The connection there is sharing that experience, because my grandmother thought enough of it to share that experience. And so, so we're adults. We're not having these experiences. I don't know what your daughters enjoy. Maybe it's the Women's World Cup when the U.S. won because you had the soccer experience or what have you. But it's, again, at this age, it's more because you build friendships and bond over common memories, and not necessarily the common memories itself.
Absolutely. And you're spot on with that. Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to open it up to questions. Anyone have a question for Mr. Jester? Whoa, while people are thinking about what grenades to throw at you, that's obviously not your given name, and you don't need to tell me what it is. I know your first name. Where'd you come up with that?
Back when computers first started coming out, we would go and have our local LAN parties where everybody would take bring their PCs over, and we'd all hook up together. So we'd all have our nickname, right? Well, my nickname was Jester. So then through the years, people started not coming to the meetings anymore, but then you start getting online and you go to subscribe to like World of Warcraft and you go to say, okay, my name is Jester. And it says that user's already been taken. That user's already been taken. Every time you try to go somewhere and create an account, Jester was always taken. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Somebody's already used my Jester. So then I decided, well, I'll just be IDJester then.
VT Bub.
Was it?
VT Bub.
VT Bub.
VT Bub. Still in my email address, as a matter of fact. Same thing. You know, I was like, you know, no one, you didn't, this is in my 20s, around the time I got married. You know, it was just before you realize that you're better off just using your own, you know, I realized for me it was better off to use my own name. What am I going to hide? I look pretty unique anyway. You know, I really can't hide who I am. Like, oh yeah, the calling card of a chair. And so it was VT Bub because it was easy to remember. And I'm from Vermont,
and you don't have to worry about somebody else stealing it.
That's right. And if someone actually did do the first 5 characters, then you just throw the number 4 after it.
Yeah.
Because that was my lucky number growing up. So yeah,
I never wanted to be like Jester 1 or Jester 246 or Jester 1000 or something. So I decided, well, I'm going to use my Jester nickname, but then I'm going to make it so that nobody out there will use it. So
it's true.
You know,
I actually thought your name was ID when I met you. Because who the hell would make that up?
Right, exactly. You know, thought my name was ID. Yeah,
ID. Someone called you Kirk once, and I went, "Well, who are you talking about?" Oh, him. Okay.
Yeah,
but yeah. No, they made it pretty clear when you got into the writing. You know, when I first started writing on the internet, this was back in 2005. We'd had enough of ESPN overhyping everything for ESPN's benefit. Can't you just play the damn game? Do we need a 9-hour pregame show for an exhibition game, for Christ's sakes? And so, you know, it's like, you know, we're going to have more credibility if we use our own names instead of just writing from my buddy at the time, Dr. Stack, who's now a college football official, Brian Sikowski. You know, Swags was Charlie Swagger. And so I wasn't VT Bub anymore. I became myself. And then I became, you know, in my own head, not dissing anyone for using what they want to use. It just made me much more accountable for what I do. I mean, today I'm Retro Sports Network, and that's fine. But you know, when I was writing professionally, you didn't want to be, you know, Bubba the Lump Sponge 69.
Right.
That's not. No one's going to take you seriously.
Nobody's going to. Yeah, exactly.
And so, questions for Chris. I mean, not Chris, as I'm looking at the chat. Questions for IDJester. We'd love to hear them now, as Chris is in the chat and Dave Gardner's in the chat. DJ John, who's new to the communities, in the chat. We talked about this earlier, but because Chris wasn't here at the start, just give him the nickel tour answer of how you got into D&D.
Okay. I was a sophomore in high school, and my buddy was like, "Hey, we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons this weekend. You want to come play?" So I went over and played, and then I was like, "Hey, this is pretty cool." So we got together about, you know, once a month or so for a while, and then that lasted throughout high school. And then when I went to college, I kind of took a break for a while for a few years, and then got back into it afterwards, probably when I was about 30 or so. So that was about 25 years ago.
D. Scott Howard asked, who's in charge here? The answer is me. My channel.
Absolutely.
But ID, okay, that was the other question. What are the other questions that I had? What made you want to interview people?
Well, because I wanted to find out more about just the people. I think, as you know, kind of my whole, you know, if you were to say to me, what's your motto in life? My motto in life is, what's your story? I think everyone has a story. Some people don't like to share it. Some people do like to share it. But everyone, even if you led the most boring, interesting life, you still have a great story if I can get it out of you. And I thought, what better way to get people more interested in what you're doing than to find out more about you? I actually had several people email me after I did the interview with you, and several people have emailed me after I did the interview the other day with Chris, just saying that, hey, great job on the interview. I really enjoyed it. If you go back and watch the videos, there's some comments there about this is awesome and stuff like that. And I think it's just the fact that get to talk to somebody, get them rolling, and get them start talking. They're going to tell you their story, and everyone I think has a story.
Without question, absolutely without question, and I really enjoyed doing it. It was always interesting being on the other end of an interview. And the tagline is that I was going to almost start the show with is that no one ever wants to watch a talk show when another talk show host is there. Who said that? Jimmy Fallon to David Letterman one night on Letterman's show.
Yeah, exactly. So I just thought, if I could get to meet with you guys and just talk with you. We're having another one next Tuesday, which is Dave Little.
I'm looking forward to that.
I don't know much about Dave Little. I know what I've seen on his channel. I know he likes basketball. He does a really good job. He's very knowledgeable about things. I can tell by the way he talks about things on his channel. But I don't know anything else about him. I have no idea because he doesn't talk about that when he's running his live stream.
Dave Little runs a Facebook group called Sports Simulations and that, and he's one of the few out there who are open to. There's a huge divide between cards and dice and computer sims, and don't even get started on things like Madden and NHL and all that, because the community is just, it's just gulfs apart. And he opened it up to all, and I started punting my games there, and that's how they started responding. And so again, just to open it up. I'm can't wait to hear what you dig up, because you do a good job of digging things up. Dave Gardner asks, do younger kids play cards and dice game, or is it just us old fogies? What's the next person to actually ask you a question about what you're playing now?
I think I'm not 100% sure what the question is, but if he's asking my perspective, if the younger generation is still playing cards and dice and the board gaming like that, I think yes, but I think board gaming also is cyclical, where maybe 85 to 95 was, there wasn't much going on in the board gaming community and stuff. And so it kind of dipped down. Then it started getting popular again because, the culture of staying home now and enjoying, parties at home and stuff like that. So I think board gaming is kind of cyclical. You have ups and downs and peaks and valleys and stuff. I've seen it at cabs. I've seen it, it's just in viewership on my channel and stuff like that. I've been doing this for 8 years now.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially when Board Game Geek, the website, and people were introduced to a lot of new games that they weren't out there. But as far as specifically sports cards and dice, I think that the way the older companies have not figured out how to introduce it to younger people. People my age, and you talked a little bit about this earlier, there were ads in the yearbooks. So when you bought that football yearbook or you bought that baseball yearbook this time of year and read through, and there was, Stratomatic and APA, you are the manager. And that kind of struck a chord, I think, with that. I also think today, because of there's peer pressure, like who wants to play a silly old cards and dice game when you can do this when you have Xbox and PS, PlayStations and all that. And I think that there's a good opportunity to get younger people to do it once they realize they're nostalgic for parts of their past. I think, especially in basketball, when the Golden State Warriors slide down that hill, People are going to want to remember that. When Tom Brady retires and the Patriots have those 2 years when they're 8-8 and Boston panics and ID just jumping jacks up and down on his front porch because the Boston team failed. Okay, I'm joking about that. He's probably not going to do the jumping jacks, but he will be quite happy. People are going to get nostalgic for that, and that's not an experience that you can get from a Madden, or that we can do it with Action PC, and I think that draws people my age and around there. But I think that's a chance to hook people. Maybe not the 15 to 17-year-olds like I was, but maybe from the 25 to 30.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's cyclical. Like I said, I think wargaming kind of is going through the same experience because a lot of the popular games were Avalon Hill that came out in 1960, right? So those people that started gaming when they were in the 1960s with their Avalon Hill games, well, they're now 80 to 90 years old and they're starting to die off.
Right.
So you're going to have this drop in, drop in games. You're going to have drop in viewership. You're going to have drop in people being interested in it. And I think after a 5 or 10 year hiatus, all of a sudden people are going to be like, "Hey," and start becoming interested in it again.
I think if reading a couple things here about technology, and I don't think Dave and DJ John are wrong about that. But with the start, basically, of the MP3 thing, and now APA finally going off and actually doing a very clunky version of their basic game on a browser, I think if you can kind of give that experience of you pure using your imagination, which I think is the magic for these cards and dice games, along with the technology to use it and not take up table space, I think you could see kind of a resurgence with younger people. But again, there's a lot of peer pressure. What the hell are you playing this for?
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah,
you see Madden commercials on the TV and MLB, the show, right? That's because they're getting all that money revenue. You don't see Stratomatic commercials on the TV. You don't see APBA commercials on the TV because that's just not the acceptable way, I guess, for the younger generation.
And who wants to? I mean, I checked the other day for a viewer, a friend of the community, about how much an APA set of cards would be for 2018. It was $75 because you're getting 30 cards per team. That's 900 cards. I'm not shelling out $75 to play a cards and dice game. It's ridiculous. But it's cards. But in order to do a proper replay of that season, you got to do it.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I see both sides of that. And Chris is right. A lot of these games are word of mouth for the most part. There are games that I can't believe that when come up in conversation, like, oh, you don't know about that? Yeah. But again, you go to the tabletop sports games forum over at Delphi, and they're half a generation older than you and I. And if you want to feel like you're 16, 17 years old again, go talk to some of those people. And it's not the friendliest community over there. I think that one of the things that we try to, that I hope to convey through my channel, and know that you do through yours, is that try to be accepting and not to like the same things that we like. There are plenty of different flavors out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
I think there was a message I got from who was it? I think it was from Southpaw. It sent me a link to a gaming system that I'd never heard of. So when I got the email message, I checked it out at work earlier today just to see what it was like. And it's basketball, hockey, football, and baseball games. And I'm like, yeah, I've never come across this. I might have to check this out.
Yeah.
And there's so much.
Absolutely. I was offered a chance to feature Friday Night Lights, which is a high school football game. But there was no PDFs to do it, and I had to turn it down. I was like, I'd love to help you, because you're in the part of the country, Bradenton itself, it's a huge high school football community down there.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's my buddy that comes for Thanksgiving every year. Grew up on Amelia Island, around there,
Yep.
and so he'll tell you know about this. 4A school versus 5A school. Okay, played in
And I'm
Vermont.
sure you've heard of IMG Academy.
Yeah. Mhm.
That is the street that I live on. If you go all the way towards the ocean, you'll run into IMG Academy, and they have literally produced some of the best baseball players coming up through the minor leagues right now, just up the road from me. So,
Chris asks if there knows of a basketball game that doesn't take 2.5 hours to play.
is there what?
A basketball game that doesn't take 2.5 hours to play. You're not a basketball
No.
fan, so
Yeah, I can care less about basketball. Sorry.
I can play Action PC streaming it in about an hour 20. I think is when I'm getting down to the times for that, and that's just coaching one team and letting the computer do the defense.
Play the other one, yeah.
No, basketball. I think of the four, I think basketball is the worst represented on the tabletop.
I would agree with that. I think baseball's number one, football's number two, hockey even beats out basketball, I believe. But there's not much hockey and there's not much.
Under an hour and a half. I don't think there's if you're just doing one with fast action cards, you can do it. No, it's even about an hour for that too. They just take too long. And I watched poor Devin trying to do a football game, and he didn't quite know all the rules yet. But that's but the book of charts he was going through was like a Michener novel, for Christ's sakes. It just was so thick, and then you got a chart for this. Football is just almost impossible on a bowl bound. I like that, or the pay dirt, but it's just so difficult because the games itself are complex. I mean, it's one of the reasons why baseball works really well.
Baseball is the perfect simulation sport because you have mano a mano. This is all you need: 2 cards, the pitcher and the batter. And
Right.
you're ready to go. So, and you have only 8 outcomes that's going to happen off of these cards. It's either going to be a man on first, a man on second, a man on third, a man on first and second, a man on first and third, or bases loaded, or an out. These are your choices of what's going to happen. There's not going to be like I gained 6 yards and it's now second down, or I gained 16 yards and it's now a first down. There's only going to be so many outcomes, so it's easy to figure out. And baseball, because baseball is all based on stats, it's easy to get the stats. So baseball, I think, is the easiest game to make for.
Yeah, but there have been baseball stat books out for 1,000 years. I bought in a bookstore that hasn't existed in 25 years, the Sports Encyclopedia of Baseball back in like 1981, and just wore the thing out. My mother was so afraid. She was right, but but that sort of thing. I mean, baseball is the continuity of baseball is within the numbers. It was only in my 40s that I realized that that's actually a bunch of BS. That that there's been plenty of different eras, and that the equivalency rates of what happened in 1930 and 1968 are not even close.
Yeah.
But to treat it all that way. All right, one last call for questions for IDJester, who's been gracious enough to take your questions and to answer some personal ones on his own. Your girl's still into soccer?
No, they're 23 and 26 now. I've got one that lives in Chicago and I got the one that lives in San Diego, and I'm hoping to go visit both of them when the Cardinals are playing.
Well, that's the way to do it. Have you been to Wrigley?
No. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't step foot in that pit hole unless the Cardinals.
I feel bad not going to Yankee Stadium before they tore it down. I learned over the years, especially when the Derek Jeters and the Mariano Rivera's came through, and Bernie Williams. I mean, how can you say a bad word about Bernie Williams? That you learn to respect those that you don't like.
Yeah.
And for me, those Yankee teams were just people loaded with people that deserved to have respect. It wasn't Reggie or Goose Gossage or any of those other punks that I hated as a kid. I mean, I think I've told you, whether you and I, when I was on your channel or with someone else, when Thurman Munson died, and I hated the Yankees. Of course, I was 8 years old, and I cried. I mean, just, not even understanding what death really is at 8 years old. Oh my God, he's gone. And so,
Yeah.
so you don't want to go to mortgagefield.com to see the Cardinals.
No, but I'm hoping to make it up there. My daughter actually lives 8.5 blocks from Wrigley Field, so I promised her I would come up and visit. So I'm hoping to work it out where weekend trip with the Cardinals, and of course I'd like to visit my daughter in San Diego as well. And I know the Cardinals only go out there one time this year, and that's
Thank you,
late
Interleague.
June. I'm sorry?
Thank you, Interleague.
Yeah. So they only go out there once, and it's like late June. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that or not, but we'll see. We'll see.
Combat Payer, the first game I ever went to was at Shea. And the second game I ever went to was at Shea 10 years later. And that was right after that certain obnoxious team won the World Series. And so it was one of those old Monday night games. There was 50,000 people at Shea, completely different from when I went in 77. And I think the Cardinals actually won that game, and I was happy. And Mr. Met tried to poke my eye out. But we had great seats. And they were $10 seats, 25 rows behind home plate. I mean, incredibly. So I have a very soft spot for Shea. I was cried when they tore that place down. I get it. I do get it. I think you kind of mentioned this earlier, but didn't know for sure. Who's your favorite player
for baseball? I would say my favorite player is Ichiro Suzuki.
Good choice.
Because I feel I actually got to watch him because he was on the Marlins for a few years as we moved down here, and they would interview him and stuff. And I think he is giving everything that he could possibly give to baseball. And he's got nothing left to give, and he finally had to call it quits. And I just respect everything that he's done throughout his career.
So OJ was your favorite football player?
No. I was
revisionist history. You can say it was.
My favorite football player would probably be Jim Kelly, of course, more modern day Bills quarterback.
Well, the 4 straight Super Bowl tries.
Yeah. And then he has a son, or had a son, that has had autism. I think his son actually ended up dying, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but I know he was dealing with all that tragedy with his son and stuff. So that's and I think he's always handled it. Yeah. He's always handled it very professional and everything.
All right, hockey, because you watched a lot of that growing up.
Wayne Gretzky has to be great. It has to be the great one. I mean, that was my time, the 1980s. I remember when the Edmonton Oilers won their first Stanley Cup. Me and my friends all piled into my van, and we drove like downtown, honking and screaming and yelling, and people would not even know what the hell we're talking about. And we're like, Edmonton just won the Stanley Cup. And they're like, who? What? What are you talking about? So it was, I thought we'd get better reception from people. Boy, did I learn that wrong.
Yeah, I remember in my 30s calling my mother to apologize for ever being 16. So yeah, I would have thought I thought you were going to say Gilbert Perreault, but when Gretzky set the record for most goals in a season, he broke Phil Esposito's record. It happened at the odd. It happened against the Sabres. So,
yeah, well, I mean, he also, I don't know if you can see this or not, he also played for the Kings.
Oh, I was wondering. I thought that was a Lightning shirt you had on. I wasn't. I saw the Stanley Cup.
No, this is my. I'm very particular about my sportswear. I will only buy it from the stadium when we go to a game.
So you've been to Los Angeles then?
I have been to Los Angeles. I've been to the stadium.
I
So
haven't
like the
personally.
jerseys and stuff, I only buy them at the stadium because I want that official. You know, I know where I got it from. It wasn't a store in China someplace. Now
Chris has
the
Stargell.
stadium probably got it from a store in China, but at least I got it from the stadium.
That's right. That's right. Chris says Stargell, Lambert, and Yager.
Good choices. Good choices. I'm not a big Jack Lambert fan. Yarmer Yager is awesome. And you had brought him up earlier. If you were going to ask me who my second favorite player was, you brought him up earlier. I bet you don't even remember.
Dryden or Perot?
No, neither one of those. Earlier.
Pujols.
Nope. Eric
No.
Lindros.
Oh, Jokey.
I liked the way he played. He reckless, abandoned.
Played very
Everyone was
well.
out to you. If you because of the big controversy, everyone wanted to kill Eric Lindros, and he had to stand up to everyone that was out to get him and outperformed everyone at the same time.
I'm not sure Quebec would have the Nordiques would have survived past the referendum much longer anyway. Separatism and all that, with reasons I'm not going to get into, just because for the same reasons of the expos and all that. But he hastened that move to Colorado.
There's also a documentary. I don't know if you've seen the documentary. You can look on YouTube.
One of those 5 reasons you can't blame Lindros.
Well,
it wasn't the only reason.
An actual I don't know if it's like BBC documentary or somebody had produced it, and I think it goes into the whole. You can thank Patrick Waugh that the hockey team moved out of Canada because there's this whole big relationship between the president and the owner of the Quebec Nordiques, Eric Lindros, his team, and Patrick Waugh as well. So it's pretty cool little episode.
Yeah, Montreal did not play well in the late 90s. There was the unforgettable image of Waugh was fight. Waugh had an ego. Waugh still has an ego.
Yeah.
And a monumental ego. And, for years he was good. And so I don't know if they had if Montreal had moved to, well, it wasn't the Bell Center when it opened, the Molson Center, or if this was still at the last year at the Forum. They're playing the Red Wings on Hockey Night in Canada. My wife would actually watch Hockey Night in Canada. And Detroit is just tearing them a new one. I think it was 8-1, 9-1. And Waugh skates off between periods. And the president of the Habs, they were owned by the Molson family, the president is sitting in row 1, seat 1, right behind the bench. And Waugh goes to him. Not sure if this was a coast-to-coast game in Hockey Night in Canada, because that was still at the time that Detroit only played Montreal twice a year. And Waugh turns to him, and the camera catches him saying, "This is the last game I'm ever playing for the Montreal Canadiens." And he was in Colorado that next week. And
I can remember watching that game live.
Yeah, I watched that game live.
You know how we talked earlier that I don't have these baseball history and memories and stuff. I have these memories for hockey.
Right.
I can remember that. I remember there was like a 3-year period where it was Detroit and Colorado was a civil war going on every time they met. And if you go back and just type in like hockey brawls, there's 3 or 4 famous ones between the Detroit and Colorado Avalanche.
Some of the best hockey ever.
Yeah,
played.
I agree. It was amazing. And my third favorite hockey player, if I had to say, and a lot of you guys probably don't even remember who he is, but it was Pavel Bure. You remember him?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He played for the Canucks. Yeah. When they went to the Stanley Cup. And
scored 80 gazillion goals and dated Anna Kournikova.
Yep. And he was one of the only few players that ever scored from behind the net when he scooped the puck up and brought it in around. You remember that?
Yep. See, this is the type of conversation. I mean, it's like I said, the games aren't as important. I mean, I've told you this before. When I call a game, I really don't care who wins. I want it to be close. I had a 9-0 game yesterday that bored me, or 10-3, I think was the final, but it was 9-0 in the ninth. One of the, it's more of. I mean, yeah, I enjoyed calling the game, but having the chat be my color guy, I love the most. It's the part I like about doing them the most.
Right?
They'll bring up stuff. D. Scott Howard talking about at one point, the ads in the magazines. At one point, he commented, I remember looking in the back of seeing his first Strat ad in the Street and Smiths in 1965. Okay, for me it was like 1978, but still, I mean, it's that sort of thing that binds people together.
Absolutely.
All right. Oh, Mateo's team lost 5-4. MP Foxes were up the road for you. In his home now. Notice Ryan was on as a coach third base tonight at my son's game. I'm jealous that you have year-round baseball. It's about the only thing I'm jealous about Florida. Trying to figure out how I could listen and coach at the same time. Well, remember, it's all video on demand. If you're not catching us live, it's always going to be there for you.
Absolutely.
But 2 doubles and scored 2 runs. That's awesome. We got to get you on as well. All right. So last call for questions. And if you actually want to be on the show, well, if you want to be an ID show, IDJester live at gmail.com.
Yep. Every Tuesday night, 8:00. We're doing Dave Little this coming Tuesday.
You're gonna love Dave. You really are.
And I'm looking for somebody to step up for the following Tuesday. I might even have somebody, a special guest as well. So we'll see.
Chris asks, do you ever get that not so fresh feeling?
Just in the morning.
My mother was a soap opera watcher, and my babysitters, of course, were soap opera watchers. And if we have to explain this to younger people, that was the bane of I miss game shows like crazy, by the way. But, soap operas I really don't miss. But the ads, between the big dramatic scene as someone's getting drunk or about to burn their house down or about to, have relations with someone that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And they break away, and the first question out of the young girl's mouth is, "Mom, do you douche?"
Yeah.
And I remember turning to my mother and going, What is that? What's douche?" "Later. We're not talking about it right now." Oh. That's game 74. Oh, how I missed the Brett and Aunt Brett and Uncle Charles. What was your favorite show growing up?
Baba Black Sheep.
I remember that.
You remember that?
I do remember that.
My favorite show. Robert Conrad was my hero. Yep, that was my show, man. I couldn't miss that show. I love that show. That was
a lot of CPO Sharky, which was on the same time. Didn't quite get the whole thing with Don Rickles, but now I do. All right, I think we're going to call it a stream. It's actually been 2 hours. So
time flies, man. I'm telling you.
It didn't feel like 2 hours.
It felt like an hour, to be honest. Yeah, it was a good time. Thanks for having me.
I really enjoyed it. And if you need another pinch hitter, let me know. But there's so many people in the community that deserved it. Because I tried not to ask the same, hot issues things, but you did a good job with that, and it draws good. I mean, you do really well with that sort of thing. I didn't know what you were going to ask when you had me on, and it was fun. It's good to think on your feet. All right, So IDJester that's the name of his channel, and you don't do any social media, right?
No, I don't do any social media.
Good for you.
I care less about that stuff. I did see that Strata McDowell says 3 little sheep who lost their way, which was part of the Baba Black Sheep thong.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, absolutely, MP Fox, and get a hold of me. I'd love to have you and the kid on there. If you're not familiar with MP Fox, he and his little boy opened up packs of baseball cards.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. And they're not gamers. I don't know if they do the show or not, but if you want to know the look in that little kid's eye, he's 8 or 9 years old. Love to you too, Chris. 8 or 9 years old, and the look in his eyes going through that stuff, it looks like me at 8 or 9 years old.
Uh,
So if you want to know what that's like, I got to get him on.
yeah,
All right.
definitely get him on because I would love to see that.
So
See, that's what I'm talking about. We need to know more about each other like this. You know what I'm saying?
So, okay, so the bow replay is almost done.
We're at game 132, so less than about 30 games left.
Goobaza. It's Goobaza.
Oh my god, I'm never going to hear the end about that. I think my nickname will be Goobaza from now on or something.
And what you do? We didn't even get into the role playing games you play on the stream, on your stream. What else you got coming up?
Well, I will be doing a live stream the next day or two on the new National Pastime Next Generation Plus. I want to finish my Bo Jackson project, which we're replaying the 1989 Kansas City Royals. And of course, I started another new project where we're playing the last 30 games of the season of the 2016 Toronto Blue Jays. And we're trying to see if we can lead them into the playoffs.
You never even got into replay, which I've discovered I really enjoy.
I know. What happened? Time went by too fast.
It just went by too fast. We'll get to it. I'm sure I'll be back on your thing and we can talk about it then. But
yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I appreciate your help having me. It's a fun time. I can't believe it went by so fast. Thanks everyone to our community to support you and your channel. I think you do a great job. So
thank you. And Al, we love you. And we hope that you're back with us soon, buddy. Take care. I don't know what my streaming schedule is going to be because the wife's got a couple things going on, but we'll get the last game of the week out and do some basketball, if not tomorrow over the weekend. And so my thanks again to IDJester, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good night.